Welcome to another episode of WestEdge Wednesday. I love these. I'm so excited about these. If you didn't have a chance to make it to WestEdge this past year, 2025, this is your chance to hear all of the programs recorded on the stage, presented by Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home, a Best Buy company, and an incredible friend to the design and architecture community. And the stage itself was designed by Kim Gordon of Kim Gordon Designs, an incredible creative who did something masterful. And by the way, if you want to see what that looks like, you can go check out this very episode on YouTube. But if you're driving or walking or don't feel like watching anything, save that for later. Listen to this episode, which I think you're absolutely going to love. This panel was called Inspired by Nature, Exterior Spaces Built to Last. It was presented by TimberTech, an AZEK company, and it also featured Sam Toole on this panel. Joining her, it was moderated by Dustin Moore of Strata Landscape Architects. So Dustin was actually on a panel last year, and then he moderated one this year. Fantastic. It features Adam Kober of Kober Design Group, Michael McGowan of KAA Design Group, Camilo Espina Landano of Hoffman Ospina, and Sam Toole with the AZEK company. An absolutely incredible program. Thank you, Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home. Thank you, TimberTech. Thank you, Kim Gordon Designs. Thank you, WestEdge. Enjoy this episode coming up right after this. This was the second year that Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home, a Best Buy company, sponsored and presented the theater at the WestEdge Design Fair. So appreciative to them. In addition to everything that they do for sponsorship, they also brought in partner Best Buy, partner Geek Squad, Hisense, and made possible a video wall to Kim Gordon's design that just, it made it pop. And I think that it's so important to understand that the most important word in design today is service. You know, product is important, price is important, selection is important, but service, stellar service, makes all the difference in the world. And if you're a designer, if you're in the trade, Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home has a simply remarkable trade program. Their Pro Rewards program, which is a trade-up program unlike any you've ever experienced before. You have a chance to earn 3% in Best Buy e-gift cards or 2.5% in a reward check for every qualified and delivered sale. In addition to trade pricing, exclusive offers, access to exclusive special events, so much more. I can't even tell you everything here. So make sure to check them out. Thank you, Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home, for your sponsorship and partnership at the WestEdge Design Fair this year and for presenting WestEdge Wednesdays, which you're about to hear right now.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dustin Moore. I'm the owner of Strata Landscape Architecture in San Francisco. So when we looked at this panel, inspired by design, we have 3 landscape architects and Sam from TimberTech. Well, a lot of other companies, but I know her from TimberTech. Inspired by design, it seems almost cliche for landscape architects. Through our training, we look at natural systems, we look at how to bring hardscape and softscape materials into our work. And so I wanted to come up with some questions that would push the panelists, give it a little bit of a deeper dive, but also keep it palatable for everyone that's here. So it's not for nerds nerding out on landscape. So with that, I'd like to have everyone introduce themselves.
I'm Adam Kober of Kober Design Group. We are a landscape architecture firm located in Newport Beach, California, specializing in I would say commercial and high-end residential both, with a little bit of an emphasis on hospitality.
All right, let's ease into this. Hi, I'm Michael McGowan. I'm an associate principal in landscape architecture and landscape architecture.
Hoffman Ospina Landscape Architecture. We are out of West Hollywood, New York, and Spring Branch, Texas as well. We work on high-end residential, hospitality, and some special gardens as well, specialty gardens. So I'm excited to be here.
And I'm Sam Toole. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer. I'm not a landscape architect. You'll find that out quickly as we answer the questions. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at James Hardie. We have multiple brands. We make Hardie board, fiber cement siding. We make TimberTech decking and AZEK exteriors. All building materials for the outdoor of your home that are all made of recycled materials and are climate resistant. So you'll hear more about that.
All right, so I'd like to start the conversation with saying inspired by nature. It can mean a lot of things to a designer. Please tell me how you're inspired by nature and how you use that inspiration in your work. And how do you keep the message of nature fresh in your office?
I think for me, the thing with nature is that, and something that I have to talk with the clients about, is that unlike a piece of tile, we're working with things that are constantly evolving. And you have to embrace how that evolves, because that's where you get the beauty from it, in my opinion. And so if you can embrace that and know that while you have done something that has a design or a look at this moment, it's going to evolve, it's going to change. And I think that's where, I think when clients embrace that, that's when they're happiest, that's when they see the most success. And that's not to say it can't change and you can't do alterations to that design later on. But I think that's one of the great things about that is, I always say it's not a piece of tile. It doesn't stay the same. And I think when you can embrace that change, that's when you can get some really great texture and color, not only in the way it's used, but how it fulfills your life in that.
Okay, so I was lucky enough about 10 years ago to stumble on a garden design mentor, Hitoshi. And one of the first things that he taught me was to just ask the question, what would nature do? And so I always come back to that question probably multiple times throughout a day and just ask myself, what would nature do? And where that really serves the process well is, it kind of forces us to look at how a natural process might form something or inform a design. And from there, there's often stories that come from that. So, for example, if you're talking about resiliency, like how would nature deal with resiliency, right? It might be the bark of a tree being sacrificial in a fire and being able to burn off, but still the tree could live on, and so designing within those parameters is something that we always try to bring to the table in our design. I think asking that question, not just with me, but also around the office, does kind of keep that kind of attention to what would nature do alive and with passion in the office.
Nature inspiration. Wow, it's a big topic. We heard the thunder last night, and the water that comes down with it has definitely influenced how I approach things. And water is very powerful. So how we control in our designs, how we control water to our plants, how we design around water features, in essence, a creek, and how the trees respond to ponds around that we create. Some trees really love those ability to stretch out. So see nature to inspire design is important. How we bring that into the office for us is visiting a lot of different nurseries. We have a small little edible garden in our rooftop, so we try to just harness a little bit of that small nomenclature of idea where we are trying to paint that in a big landscape for our clients, but we know how tedious it could be. So it kind of forces us to not want to promote vegetable gardens when you're tasked at fighting off the pests, etc. So again, in looking for inspiration through nature too, as a landscape architect, of lately just learning how even just the use of water to shake the flowers off the pollen of the olive tree so they don't fruit, or how I use water just to shake the aphids or the aphids off the plants, as opposed to using chemicals, where water can really be its own sort of healer in plants as well. So I do look for inspiration through water in many, many multiple sources. So.
Well, Sam, I mean, you could approach it as how your different companies use natural influences. Like with TimberTech, I'm always impressed by it's believable. I mean, it's one of the few products that the first time I saw it, they lied to me and told me it was a new tropical hardwood, but it's so believable. And so as they develop new products, like how do they bring that into the office?
Well, that's a good question. I think we have a guy who's leading our product development. He actually came from the flooring industry, which is interesting because it has a lot of expertise with lots of different kinds of hardwoods and really studies actual hardwood to learn what makes it look like wood, right? Because we're always trying to be as realistic as we can. And there's teams of material scientists that figure out how to take the recycled, I'm looking at you, I could look at you, the recycled material that we build our products out of. So TimberTech decking, we have composite and PVC decking, but all of it is made with recycled plastic waste. Things that would have gone, plastic PE and PVC plastic that would have gone in the landfill. We basically grind it up and put it into the middle of these boards that last for 30 to 50 years to your whole life. We recycle hundreds of millions of pounds of plastic every year. We're the largest PVC recycler in the US. So it's pretty exciting when you see all of this waste that we're consuming and putting in these boards. But at the end of the day, if they don't look like wood, then nobody wants them, right? So we're constantly challenging ourselves more and more to make them look as real as possible. And so I think it's not so much in our corporate office, but certainly in our R&D centers and in the lab. It's all about studying real wood and looking to find what are those characteristics, whether it's texture, tone, the cascading of colors, patterns, the matte, the finish. This guy could talk to you for hours. He's fascinating, actually, about this kind of stuff. But yeah, it all goes back to real wood that we're looking to mimic.
So my next question, it kind of builds off of what you were talking about, Juan. So talking about how we use natural systems in design, whether it's through water, so it's diverting water into use for irrigation or to build up pollinator gardens, so trying to use native plants to build up pollinators. I'd love for the three of you to talk about those systems and how you use them.
I mean, I think in a lot of the projects that we have now, they're all trying to figure out how to keep water on site, and so trying to create these systems so that not only are there opportunities to keep water on site, but to make it look like A, it belongs there, and B, that it's still attractive. And sometimes you just have to be really creative in how that happens. But it does seem like more and more there's a lot of emphasis on being able to keep water on the site, and so with the dry riverbeds, that's kind of a quick, easy thing that happens. But there are other solutions that you can implement. But yeah, for sure, I think that it's the way things are moving, in that we're trying to keep water so that it's a valuable resource, and so the more we can keep it on site, the better.
And for the record, we have to do that per code.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
well. So I'm going to approach this question a little bit differently from a different angle, and that's just to think about it in terms of from our client's perspective. So we're always trying to create stories for our clients and involve them in the story. And one of the more powerful ways that we do that is to educate them to the point where they build an awareness for themselves of those natural processes, so they can understand the rhythms of rain and wind and all those natural elements that get you to be aware and notice that subtle beauty of the design. That really just underlines all of that, right? I mean, and you know, the reason why it's powerful is because those stories become what they tell their friends and how they engage other people in the space. And so it's not about any one particular, physical process, but like a general awareness of the fact that there are physical processes going on, and then just through exploration of the client, kind of trying to find what really touches them, and incorporating that into the design. So there is that thread that they can follow and get to there themselves. No.
Yeah, we are in an environment that civil engineers have a lot to do with our work. We have structural engineers that get in the way of our work as well. And I say that because we're in built environments that sewer systems are already in place. We have drainage systems already in place. And if we're talking Southern California, we're talking clay soils, heavy soils, and water doesn't move well. So sometimes we fail at capturing water here in California because the ground doesn't want it. It rejects it. It would kick it out. So we have to work with civil engineers to do infrastructure that is very costly, and that cost is very hidden. It's all underground. And it's one of those items that isn't fun to discuss, but it's a very big ticket item, and you have to bring it up. So we do our best to cover over all of those obstacles that get in place of a natural setting. So as much as we want to do and be more creative, we are limited by the resources, by the lot sizes. Some of the better projects that you're seeing on are the ones that have lots of land. And when you have lots of land and you're outside of a city, it changes the environment. So we play a little different. So it's just case by case. You have to apply it for each individual job, whether it's in San Francisco or if it's in California, Los Angeles here. So it's just figuring out what works best. So we try to incorporate the best practice methods is sort of the approach. And we try to push against a lot of the governing bodies where they say draw a straight line, we try to curve it. And that is our jobs for our clients, is to kind of help the civil not just be so A to B.
Yeah, no client wants to hear about the underground storage, especially when it takes up a quarter of our budget. So the next question I want to start with Sam. So all four of you are from different parts of the country. And, I'd love to talk about those backgrounds and how that influences your work, whether it's through marketing or through design, and just how it changes the way that you approach projects.
How where we're from changes the way we approach projects?
Well, for landscape architects,
okay.
yes. But
Well, actually, I can answer that too. So our company is based in Chicago, but I live in Northern California. And certainly just being a Californian changes, I feel like I really understand what it means to live here and feel the threat of climate and how that can affect you. And obviously, fires, that whether they happen near you or adjacent to you, you're thinking about it all the time. And one of the things I've seen over the last few years since that I've been in this industry, I've always been in sort of, home, but more adjacent to building materials, is how that feeling that I was kind of alone as a Californian when I started, now it's spread everywhere. So people in the Midwest, who are most of my work colleagues, are now very articulate and thinking a lot about the climate and where they live and the external factors and things about their home in a way that's grounded in their geography that I think is relatively new. So I'm definitely paying attention to that. Our business is so regional. I travel all over, so everything depends on your perspective of where you're grounded, whether you're in the desert or you're in the mountains or you're in the, everything about your home is about where you live. And even if you're not, you guys are thinking all the time about how to align your design with your environment. And I think that homeowners are thinking of that more and more now too than probably they ever have been.
Yeah, homeowners do dream though. They say, bring me back to my Nantucket house in Palm Springs. I want Versailles in the desert.
So I just got back from vacation in Tahiti, and I want my Tahitian dream here in Los Angeles.
So yes, I am. I was born in Colombia. I'm an American, Colombian-born citizen. I grew up in a coffee farm. I grew up around cattle, and then I moved to the Silk City in Paterson, New Jersey, when I was about 10. So the demographics for me completely changed. The horseback riding went to sleigh riding. The gardens that I was accustomed to became small lawns along the suburban residences that I knew now as America. And that has influenced me. It sort of kept me chasing that agriculture without me wanting to. I grew up around a lot of architects and a lot of doctors in my family, and they influenced me to sort of have that education. And voila, I went through school, did landscape architecture programming, and I've been a landscape architect for many years. I've been in this industry since I was at a firm at 19. I'm 47 now. I started at a nursery at 16. So I've been involved in this built environment, and I could see that how I can be an influence by what really is some of those experiences in the New Jersey area where it's sub-zero degree weather as a landscape architect, and then chasing dreams out in California where Los Angeles allows me to build pools all year round and build landscapes all year round is really has given me the fruit bearing of having offices across the United States to be able to cater to those clients, knowing all those different regions, what plants can we be used and what can't, what materials we can use and what we can't. I think a lot of people downplay what we as landscape architects and our knowledge of what we've been taught through school and what we're able to really take and find good substance. So there's a lot of sort of a path where people ignore the landscape architect, but we can bring a lot of value to a project. We can catch a lot of things at the beginning stages where we can save thousands of dollars to a client. So I do find that the growing up around that agriculture helped me be where I am today. So,
Michael, do you remember the question?
I can follow up on that also. What was the question? I'm torn between.
So, what parts of your background, where you grew up, how does that influence your design work and your career?
Yeah. Okay, so I grew up on the East Coast in Maryland. I got into the landscape industry when I was handed off the job from a friend to be the curator of plant records for the arboretum, the campus arboretum, Salisbury State University. So I managed that database of plants, and I had to learn and tag all of the plants on campus. My boss was a landscape architect, and he started to teach me about landscape architecture. And I didn't want to do defense mapping which is what my degree program was focusing me towards. So I decided to go to graduate school for landscape architecture. How that has shaped my career is that when I moved to California for graduate school, I had to basically kind of relearn a whole new palette of plants and a whole new set of environmental conditions. Fast forward to now, and one of the more interesting things about our work is that our work is, we are being invited to do projects basically all over the world. So, it's like like Dubai, the first thing is to just kind of figure out, okay, well, what's really going to be important here to the diurnal changes of the design, right? Like what's going to live, what's going to survive, how are things going to react in a shade environment in this larger climate, and then also not just Dubai where it's the heat, it's like working in Montana where you get like sub-zero temperatures and trying to figure out like, okay, well, what does that mean for a pool, right? Like we're exporting that Southern California design aesthetic, which is what we're being hired to provide, but we have to do it in a way that is sensitive and ultimately functional for the environment that it exists in. And so it has to respond to that context, but also still has to have that kind of that Southern California, mid-century modern flair. So that learning curve is really kind of interesting and kind of keeps me passionate about the work because there's always a new environment, there's always a new wrinkle, there's always something that you're learning. Yep.
I grew up in Indiana on a farm, and so landscape was a different deal. I mean, it was almost, you understood it as seasonal. The pendulum swings pretty far. You have the warm summer months that can be extremely hot, and then in the winter it gets below zero. And so finding a plant palette that can handle all of that and be bulletproof can be difficult and challenging. I quickly made my way to Southern California and did my first college internship out here. And it felt, well, one of the reasons was, there was business all year round. It was kind of a business move. But I also quickly started getting trained up in using plants that could be used year round, and using lots of evergreen plants. And I actually feel like being in Southern California actually started to influence how I designed when I would go back to New York, or when I would go to Texas, or when I would go to Indiana, or any place outside of California. And I feel like what I learned here in using those evergreen plants, using those plants that don't have a cycle, because you go to the East Coast, you go to Indiana, you go to Texas, and it's almost accepted that landscapes go down. And I mean, even in hotels. And I don't feel like you have that, as the standard's a bit higher out here. And I feel like when people walk into a hotel or they drive onto a property, they want it to look, top notch. And I find that in some areas of the country, that standard is, or it's maybe not even a standard, it's just an acceptance. And so what I have found is that I feel like coming out to Southern California, learning a plant palette, learning a way of doing things, and how you use those plants has actually affected how I design now back where I came from. And so I find that interesting. I find that I try to create landscapes that, while there is a down season, it's less noticeable. And so it's interesting for me. I feel like it's kind of flipped. It's not Indiana has affected or influenced Southern California, Adam. Southern California, Adam, now is being able to take that back.
That's really interesting. That's the exact opposite where I thought that was going. But I love it when clients ask for evergreen, looks amazing all year, but I want seasonal change, right?
Yeah. Well, but those are great.
Yeah, exactly. So my next question, we'll start with you, Michael. The borrowed landscape. Describe it for me. And I'm just interested how you use the borrowed landscape after you describe it in your work and how that influences projects.
Yeah, so This is an interesting question because this is something we always try to do, but we don't necessarily disclose it, not even to our clients. Right, so we're fortunate to have, rather wealthy clients that, that can buy, larger properties where the borrowed landscape you might not think is that important. But one thing that I've learned over the course of my profession is that it doesn't matter how much property our clients own, they want to feel like they own more of it, right? So,
So before you keep going,
Yeah.
for the audience, can you describe borrowed landscape? Because that is landscape nerd talk.
yeah, it is. This is a very mechanism to the design that is a fence barrier between yourself and a distant view. Makes you feel like that distant view is part of the property that you're on, and so that obviously becomes very challenging when you're in a urban or suburban environment where the parcels are not that large. But we always try to make them feel larger. And I think the way that we do that is by creating layers is one mechanism, right? So, the more layers that you can create, it makes it feel like that space is deeper than it really is. Another thing we do is we try to choreograph where people might be looking as they're as they're using a space or inhabiting a space. So, for example, taking the attention off of a neighbor that is, 20 feet away, and putting attention on a water feature, right? Or, by the same token, there's always vehicles or cars, right? So, not even just visual, but like the sound landscape, right? Like trying to make sure that we are encapsulating that experience, and making it feel like that's the only experience for miles, right? So masking vehicle noise, airplane noise, et cetera, is another way that I would argue is a borrowed landscape.
All right, Adam, do you want to go?
I mean, I was just going to tag on to what you said regarding, even you frame up all these views, you try to get people to focus where you want them to focus because that's the money shot. But then also, light, and trying to keep people's light, like neighbors' lights and things like that, outside, so that people, when they are on their property, when they are within their sanctuary, it feels like it's there, because light travels very quickly, and it's one of those things that you get the wrong light from someone else's, spot, and it can really just dampen the mood of the space that you've created within the property. And so, yes, sound is one thing, but I also find that we're often trying to shield people from the light pollution of, whether it's in an urban setting or even, clear off on a mountain, you'll still see someone's villa out there and their lights, and great for them, but that's not what I want to look at. And that's not what I want for our space. And so it's something that, we try to pay attention to as well.
It's kind of what Michael was saying with using plants so you can screen away those things, focus on the distant views, and kind of pull that all in.
Yeah.
So Juan, same question. And maybe talk a little bit about like plant material, like using plants that are native plants, trying to pull those textures in, those colors in. Love to hear how you approach that.
As far as that approach with borrowed landscapes, I do fall into more of a historical research when I get into projects. So someone like Jens Jensen, he's a landscape architect in the 1920s, 1930s, and but they were, and Frank Lloyd Wright did this in a little bit, but it was sort of this prairie style where they were taking some of the Midwest grasses and what they were doing is creating these faux visuals with plants where they can bring ovals. So when we design landscapes, we try to do planting beds that are more serpentine than just rectilinear. That creates these borrowed visuals when you're sitting on a chair. That angle and how those grasses massed together create that visual and allows an art piece to sort of sit behind that. Creates for us who are sitting here, now we can see that as an axial or as a piece in the landscape. So it's how we treat those spaces using the right plant materials. You talked about layering plants, and we have always been taught sort of ground covers into perennials, into a shrub, into flowering, into an evergreen. And that layer allows the eye to sort of feel and look off into the sky. In these small residential areas, we have to be very conscious of how we can use the neighboring tree to provide us some of that evergreen backdrop while allowing maybe some of the ornamental specimen trees that could be in front of that evergreen to be more colorful, so it'll help pop. So it's just finding, strategically placing the right tree, the right pot. I think sometimes we're in these hardscape environments, so bring in potted plants into our environments are also borrowing nature. I think borough landscapes too are also interior designers and architects' way of taking our space by having these outdoor rooms with the covered patios, etc. But then they put us into a position where more hardscape right next to the house, and it's our goal to try to still soften that, so it becomes another layer of how we're dealing of creating a landscape around the patios, but not blocking out the depth of the property.
It doesn't have to be confrontational. Collaborate. Let's kind of shift gears. We'll talk a little bit about material selection. So with, and we're going to break this up into two parts. One, natural materials, so especially talking about stone, like when we approach projects, we'll use some of the borrowed landscape, so taking some of those colors, making sure that the stone that we're selecting fits that environment. So I'd love to hear a little bit about how you approach material selection, whether it's stone, metal, any part of the landscape. We'll start with you, Adam.
I think we tend to our firm, we focus and primarily use natural materials. So we do use a lot of stone in almost all of our hardscapes. But I think it just depends on the context. There is a place for concrete. There is a place for metal. There is a place for glass mosaics. It's got to be context appropriate. One of the things that I think we're seeing is, how you use those evolves and changes. The use of pea gravel, I think has started to become more of a focus as a top dressing than it used to be, years ago because of it's not flammable. And so that's something that, we're seeing needing to use as, just because of we're in a time where fire is a definite consideration. Natural materials, context appropriate, but I'm losing my train of thought here.
It's all good. Well, kind of building on the gravel, color that we're seeing it doesn't feel, you have to wear shoes in this garden. But, so a lot of it comes back to pulling those colors in and making sure that the distant landscape is also influencing your material selection.
Right. And I also think we're seeing lots of trends where a trend that's becoming popular is that it's less precise, it's less cut. we're seeing people wanting to go more natural, more broken edges. And I think that is just kind of indicative of, we're in this digital age where everything is so precise. It's always like this, it's so dialed in. And when they walk outside, they're wanting to escape that a little bit. And I think allowing those broken edges to be, in the materials that we use is something that we're seeing our clients gravitate towards.
I'd love to know how you're pitching that, but Michael?
Lie. No. Crushed stone is never a problem. It never gets stuck in your shoes. It never gets tracked in the house. But it's always beautiful and engaging and warmer than any other paving. Sorry. That wasn't my answer. But
yeah, I even had one client where we're going between 1/8 of an inch gravel and 3/8. Yeah. And I was like, well, 3/8, you're not going to track it on your tennis shoes. It's a problem if you wear hiking boots, and I literally look down and she's wearing hiking boots. It's like in the middle of Atherton, there's no reason to be wearing hiking boots.
You're not going to track it in with high heels either, but also maybe
Exactly.
not be able to walk on it with high heels. Yeah.
All right, Juan, love to hear.
Well, we were talking about materials. Yes, natural material. I fished stone out of rivers to build walls in my youth. So to me, to understand where material comes from, I visited several quarries throughout the United States to get a sense of an understanding. I speak to a lot of representatives of materials like TimberTech and other products because we have to be environmental conscious sometimes. We can't just order wood. It's not sustainable or too expensive or not eco-friendly. So we are looking always at materials. California, Southern California, we don't have a lot of stone that is usable. You can get decomposed granite, lots of it, but we're importing a lot of stone. So when we are talking about a project and we're looking at timing, we're also looking at budgets and craftsmanship. We're looking at durability. So when I travel to a northern state, I have to think of a different material than I have to think here in Southern California. We bring a lot of stone from Africa, Europe. There's a lot of stone that comes from North America, both in Canada and also down in Mexico. So you're getting stone from a lot of different parts of the world. So when you're looking at that cost, materials, availability, so you're trying to find local sources, you're trying to find regional sources, or you outsource as much as you need. But we're always thinking about materials. Materials bring a value and a cost. So there's materials that look great, but they're hard to install. Some of the installations here in California, because of our seismic shifts, we can't just lay stone like we would per se in Indiana. We have to be considerate of that, so it brings costs up to clients. So it's just always being conscious of what your budget is. There's some great products. There's some really great now stone material that's been designed to be cut a little thinner, to be a little cheaper, to be a little bit transported easier. But at the end of the day, nothing beats beautiful stone material. Nothing also in our soils when we talk about material, like he was saying, the pea gravel, but pea gravel on top of trees, especially olive trees or oak trees, it's just not a really good thing for them. So we're getting forced by insurance companies to remove mulch due to fire, and then they're leaving us to sort of put a heavy amount of stone that gets hot, and all that sun on gravel under a tree just creates this boiling point. So it's just we're always trying to again find what's the best method and best solutions.
So the second part of this question, so man-made materials. So when we founded our firm, it was in our mission statement that we're going to be true to materials, not using man-made materials. And I'd say 5 or 6 years ago, Dectin, so synthetic countertops, that was my first foray into it. And now as an office, it's the only option. I can't sit through another meeting to talk about stained granite, even though I said it's going to stain. And if our clients want a natural stone countertop, they have to sign a disclaimer in our office that says that I will not even go to the meeting. Like, I'm going to hand you off to someone to clean it, seal it, and it's going to happen. So I'd love to hear from all of you how you're using synthetic materials, example, and like how that sounds kind of cliche, but like how do you bring that back to feeling natural?
Who's going first?
Whoever has an answer.
I mean, I'll start just so again, TimberTech, they use recycled products. There's a company called Oceanside Glass, and they recycle all the bottles, and they make wonderful glass tile. So these are products that are, yes, man-made. I'm sitting on man-made fabrics. I'm talking to a man-made microphone. So it is very difficult when we're, especially moving forth in this industry where there's going to be more generated paver blocks that are easier to produce than a nice natural stone. Those are always battles we're always tested against, and it's mostly budgets. When we want to do the right thing, well, this is cheaper, and the client just looks at the ticket price. And so we try our best as landscape architects to put our best foot forth, but we're not the budget drivers. We don't make the money, and the decisions sometimes come from the top down. And we do provide at least the best resources. We give options. I find that as landscape architects, we do have to take educational classes to keep our licensure going every year. So we get more knowledge than most local civil engineers or structural engineers. They sit around with their data from 20 years ago, and I feel like we're always influencing them to look at new products. So I'm always pushing the engineers, yes, with man-made products, unfortunately, as natural as they can be, but trying to do it for the right reason. So.
Yeah, so this is an interesting discussion because it borderlines on the sustainability of those man-made materials, which is
That's
always...
the next question, by the way.
Oh, see, if you would have given us
going.
the questions beforehand, we could have set this... So what I was saying is, so it's always it's somewhat of a struggle, to know that you're trying to save money, you're trying to do the right thing. You've got trade-offs on, how much maintenance required for something. So there's a tale of unsustainability there as well. So we're actually working on a project in Dubai now, and one of the designs that we are putting forth is to basically plant a roof in some regards, but heck of a lot of off-gassing and just a long tail. So I don't pretend to have the answers, but as landscape architects, I think we would all agree that we are constantly confronted with those tough questions of what's the right thing. I wanted to steer away from the stone because that's an obvious one. Obviously, porcelains are really great and they've been around forever. But I mean, I'm just looking around. We are surrounded by artificial plants, and they have become really, really great. So wouldn't it be awesome if somebody could find a way to make those plants out of soy or some other. Well, it's biodegradable, right? So it would disintegrate in 2 months, but hey, it looks great for this 2 months. So that's the mental. Actually, did I answer your full question?
No, I think it seems that it comes down to budget a lot of times when you go from man-made materials to needing to look at man-made options. Or natural materials to man-made options. Obviously stone, but I think the glass is a big thing. And then the board formed concrete has had this huge surge in popularity, and so everybody wanted that for a long time, and so context appropriate. But I think that going from a natural material to a man-made typically is driven by budget. To jump into your sustainability, I think artificial turf is having its day, and I am always challenged with what's the end of that artificial turf, and what are we going to do, because we're creating mountains of artificial turf that has a lifespan and then gets rolled up, and then where does it go? And we have so many clients that are in love with this perfect green lawn that they can have, or when you're doing a hotel and you're doing a wedding venue, and they are an event space, and you can't have natural turf go down because they're turning that space over. They're doing a wedding in the evening, and then the next morning they're doing a Mother's Day brunch, and natural turf does not handle foot traffic like artificial can. The question then becomes, okay, so we've got this natural turf, or this artificial turf that we've had. It's been great, and we've used it for 2 years, and now it's time to. It's gone through its lifespan, and we're going to do another. We're going to redo it. Well, where does the old artificial turf go? And there are so many cities who are encouraging people to get rid of their lawns, get rid of and so many people are putting this in, and one of the questions we talk about in our office is, where does that go? And has anybody thought that through in what we're doing? Because we're basically putting a bunch of plastic, in landfills, or and that's not what we're supposed to be doing as people in the green industry.
Maybe we can make lumber out of it.
I was going to say, we recycle all that stuff.
And so I think
They're recycling all of it now. I mean, there's a demand for that.
I think there are a lot. I think it's more popular in Europe that it's to do that, but I think we haven't had the push in America yet to do that.
It's happening, but yeah. I mean, we're not doing turf yet. Can I respond to a couple?
Yes.
Things? I love this conversation. It's so interesting because I think this dynamic of natural, man-made, or whatever is a really healthy tension, that we all see in our lives all over the place, right? A couple things. One, I'm trying to remember now. I've had so many. Budget. So our products are way more expensive than wood. So people are trading up and spending more money on a TimberTech deck. Particularly, our best-selling line is our most expensive because it looks the most like wood. It's Class A. It's fire resistant. It's ignition resistant. You don't have to. It lasts the lifetime. It's recyclable at the end of life. We grind it up and make new boards out of it. You never have to take care of it. You don't have to sand it, stain it, seal it. You wipe it off with a sponge, basically. Depending where you live, obviously, but it's pretty easy to take care of. Certainly, you're not refinishing, sanding, staining your deck every few years. You're also saving the water that goes with that, the time, the labor, the cost, and it's more environment. It actually has a lower carbon footprint than trees do, than wood. So you compare a regular wood, and you're not cutting down trees, but then you compare it to Ipe, and it's like. It's off the charts. I mean, one Ipe tree takes 150 years to grow back. I mean, Ipe is one of the most unsustainable products there is. So, it's a trade-off, basically. And people are willing to pay more now for things that, and similar for the fake turf, too, right? I mean, a lot of it has to do with just not using water. You want it to look good all the time, but I know in my house, we have fake, it was the best thing we ever did. The dog loves it. We all love it. Our water bills were off the charts. I mean, and it was a surprise every month, and now we kind of are able to have a yard that, it's not any near the kinds of things you guys design, but just as a person, it makes sense for us. So anyway, I think there's a lot of trade-offs, and I think you're right about once you start to have those existential conversations with yourself, or you think about like, where does all this go? What are we going to do with all this? I mean, it does get scary, right? I think we're going to see a time in California coming soon where we're not going to use wood on the outside of a home because it's just not it's just not climate proof. It's just not smart. You're going to have, homes that aren't going to be insured if they don't have certain products used on the outside of them that are smart in terms of fire. And so I think the fact that we have advancements in material science and we have things that we can use that look beautiful and that keep us safe is pretty amazing. Now, is it something we should use everywhere and for every instance? Of course, I want still real flowers, and real things that grow and die, and it's weird if they never change. Nature is supposed to evolve, right? So I think there's certain things we expect to do that, but it's a trade-off, right? And the sustainability piece, I spoke a little bit about it, but that word means so many different things, there's the impact you're having on the environment in terms of your carbon footprint or what materials you're consuming, and then there's the time and resources you're using to maintain, what you have, and then there's the actual materials themselves. That when you're, the more you can consume, recycle or consume waste as you're making something new, that's pretty exciting what you're able to do. I think. In the case of AZEC, I think we're at like 600 million pounds a year of recycle. 600 million pounds of plastic that would have gone in the ocean or in the landfill. We have recycling bins on job sites and take PVC pipe and siding and really all the waste, what it looks like. We take everything in the way on an impact that can have. That quantity of recycler stuff does become really sustainable. So, but it's a trade-off.
So I do think that turf is going to find its way into some other recycled product in the future because you're right.
It will be. There'll be a demand for it.
There's so much of it, and we used to be against it in our office, but it's everything you're talking about. Like it's all season. You don't have to worry about. Sometimes dogs won't do their business on it, which is a problem, but
Sometimes it gets really hot and you need to put water on it.
Exactly.
But in the long run, way more.
They're perfecting that too, just like we're perfecting deck. There's a demand for this stuff, so I think we'll see it, continue to grow. But there's got to be a balance, I think.
Yeah, and there's turf companies too that are also in that competition, meaning they're trying to find turf that is less water dependent, that's more durable, that's more hardy. So in the botanical world, they're still trying to find solutions for it. Just as other options, we talk about, but for those of you that don't know the installation of a turf, there's a lot of compacted gravel underneath the turf. So it's essentially a gravel patio that you're laying this carpet on. And until somebody finds a really good sustainable product, it's very easy to use, but a lot of counties and there's some pushback on some of the cities now. They just won't approve it.
Yeah. Well, I don't think we have time for my full sustainability question, but we've covered a lot of it. So Josh, do we want to do questions or?
Does anyone have any questions?
Don't be shy.
There we go.
Come on. Q&A.
All right. So obviously with nature, there's so much of a sensory experience. And I just wanted to ask each of you, of those 5 senses, which one speaks the most to you in the work that you produce?
I think, visually, I think that's one of the first things and is probably the most dominant when it comes to the things that we design. As a landscape architect, I think we have the unique opportunity in that what we design actually can touch on all 5 senses. Sight, sound, the way we use water. Putting a small fountain outside of a a library, a person, someone's personal library, or it's outside a dining room, just so you hear that little trickle, I think can do something with the senses, in the way you react to that. And it's, obviously with flowers and things, you have the smell. But that's one of the things that I love about landscape is that it's one of those fields in which, you can tap into all five senses and even taste, like with the vegetable gardens. I mean, it's like, it really is one that, you can add taste to that. I do think visually that's obviously the most dominant thing that comes to mind, but I'm always one for using a good fountain to to create that ambient sound outside of a nice space.
Yeah, I was going to add to that. I think an interesting piece of that is the complex interrelation of multiple senses that it kind of exists in our clients' brains, and oftentimes it's recalling a childhood memory or recalling a childhood experience that they want to get back to, and they want that the feeling of that dopamine hit from their childhood, and it really is about kind of recreating that sensory complex that will transport them there. So that's kind of the power of designing to sensory.
I mean, I think we were just touching on it, but it's the visual sensory is this biophilic mindset where we're surrounded by all these plastic tarps, and we're surrounded by this plastic turf and these plastic plants, but the color green, for some reason, for us humans, is drawing this other visual. It's more than just the eye, right? So when you throw that green and you give it a little bit of a orange color right next to it, then your eye just begins to wonder what could be a fragrance. So your mind has already begun to want to, is that citrus or is that a rose? And you start compiling. So it's like they were saying, it's an opportunity to be a visual and take somebody through that front walkway. And while they're walking by, wow, that was a beautiful scented, where did that come from? But we kind of tucked it in there. But visually, they're always still, as a human, you're always looking at those cues. Animals look for those cues. Insects look for those reds and those oranges. They cue in. So I think we as humans naturally will visually go to that as one of our sensory. So.
That is so cool to think that a color can make you smell something. I never thought of that. It's so true. That's fascinating.
How fun was that? Amazing. Incredible. Loved it. Thank you to Dustin, Adam, Michael, Juan, Sam. What a great group. Love this. Thank you, Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home. Thank you to Kim Gordon Designs. Thank you to TimberTech for sponsoring and presenting this talk. Thank you, WestEdge. And thank you for listening. Make sure that you are subscribing to the podcast so that you receive all of these episodes automatically to your feed the moment they're published. Thanks again for listening. See you next time.